Hey everyone, this is Will from Will Brett Design. You are watching episode 4 of the UI motion design course, and today we're going to be taking what we've learned from the previous episodes and learning how to animate a toggle in After Effects. As you can see from what's playing right now, it's just a looping animation, and we can see that it's already drastically better than what we were creating in Figma. And there's a few reasons for that. The main one being that After Effects is a motion design software, whereas Figma is a design tool which has some prototyping capabilities that are pretty amazing. But nothing really beats actual motion design in After Effects when creating animations. As we can see, we've got these really smooth keyframes animating our toggle handle. And we can make it really have that nice liquid effect, and we have full control over exactly when our color changes, as well as the shape of our handle. And we also have access to things like these curves here, which we did have some basic controls in Figma if we just quickly hop back in, but we were doing it in these keyframes like this, and we were kind of hacking it in a way using a after delay of 1 millisecond so that it would automatically move to the next frame. And then we were using the smart animation tool, which is absolutely amazing. Don't get me wrong, Figma have done an excellent job here, but this is essentially just going to get you a half decent prototype at the end, which I'll just quickly play. Whereas what we can make in After Effects is super high polished. So here we go. That one didn't load. Let's just load up this one real quick. Sorry about that. There we go. We can see it's still quite a nice animation, but it's not quite as nice as the After Effects one, which I'll play here. As you can see, it's just so much smoother and snappier. We can also do things such as a hover, so that when our mouse hovers over the handle, we could have an animation there as well. And we can see we've got this really nice kind of pulsing liquid animation. We'll have a look at how to create that as well. So let's jump back in from episode 4, and that was from where we did our exporting from Figma into After Effects using our designs from Figma, and then we're going to animate them in After Effects now. So here we go. Not sure why this is taking so long to open. There we go. As you can see, when we exported from Figma into After Effects using the AEUX plugin from episode 3, we ended up with this folder up here in our project, with our toggle folder, and then our toggle composition. Inside our toggle composition, which if you don't have it open, you can double click, you will find the toggle handle, which is the handle here, and you will also find the toggle background. As we're not going to be, actually we are going to be animating the toggle background, so we are going to show both of these. So what we want to do first is create a small on animation. We're going to make each animation a separate composition. The reason for that is that we can then export each one of those compositions as its own Lottie file later on, and then we can use those Lottie files in our projects, in our code, so on our websites, in our apps. Whereas if we did it as one file, we can still do that, but it requires some code to be able to select which keyframes to play at which point. So it's kind of up to you which way you want to go with it, but for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to be creating each animation separately. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is just quickly jump into the LottieFiles website. And if I scroll right to the bottom and into their footer section, we can go to a section called Supported Features under Code. And I highly recommend you reading through some of the Learn stuff as well and watching some more tutorials on this. I'll be providing more Lottie tutorials as we go, but we want to have a look at a few supported features. So In essence, Lottie does not support all the features of After Effects, and that's because After Effects is incredibly powerful and uses a lot of things called expressions, which are kind of After Effects code. And not everything can be supported by Lottie, because Lottie is a really lightweight tool, and if it could support some of these really complex expressions, it wouldn't be such a simple thing. It would be so user-friendly. Also, the files would probably be pretty huge, and things like apps and websites might not even be able to play it, whereas After Effects is kind of intended to render out a video and then you play that baked video, whereas this is playing things live on the fly. So we can see per platform what can be done in Lottie, and to be honest, loads. You can do loads. Where we will find some walls or obstacles is as we start to come down into the mask section. So some of these aren't supported, as we can see, and this could be due to the device or the operating system, or the browser doesn't support these, or it could be the Lottie itself doesn't support them. Same for a few mats, a few merge paths, and layer effects aren't supported on some devices, mainly mobile. Web seems to be supporting it. And then as we get further down, we can see certain things aren't supported at all, such as expressions. So we can see that expressions aren't supported on Android, iOS, or Windows, which is a shame, but that's just how it is. And even though it says they are supported on web, not necessarily all expressions are supported. So we need to be careful when creating animations. So in this tutorial, we won't be using expressions for that purpose, but I do recommend you playing around with expressions. You can find a load in the effects, or you can actually enter your own on the actual items. That's out the scope of this video. I just wanted to get that out of the way now. Okay, so let's get going. Right, so first thing we want to do is we want to make our track length. So our composition length in seconds, we want to set that. And I think we want this animation to be pretty snappy. So I'm just going to, for now, set it to 1 second. We can also see if we click here that we've got a transparent background. So when we come to export it, as a Lottie, it won't have a background, which means that we could put this onto any colored background, and you'll see that later. Okay, so next we want to go into our toggle handle, expand it by clicking this drop down arrow, and go into our transform, and we want to turn on our position keyframe. So as we can see in the timeline, we are set at 0, and we now have a keyframe at 0 seconds. The next thing I want to do is jump all the way to 1 second. Now, it doesn't always let you drag the totally forgotten what this thing's called, but I'm going to call it a slider, to the full length. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another keyframe, which you can do by clicking here, and then I'm just going to drag that keyframe right to the end. There we go. So now we've got our keyframes, but it's not actually doing anything. So what we need to do is we need to adjust this keyframe. So I'm just going to move that back quickly. And on the x-axis, we're going to move it over to the other side, like so. In fact, I'm just going to leave that there. So now as I scrub the timeline, you can see it moving, and we can press play, and we can actually see that's incredibly slow. So 1 second is obviously far too slow for this animation. We want it to be really snappy. So before we go and shorten it, my computer's going really slow, probably because I'm recording and using After Effects at the same time. I'm going to move this keyframe to half a second. And let's play that and see what that's like. I'd say that's still a bit slow. So let's move it to 1/4 of a second. That's better. So what we want is 1/4 of a second for this animation. So I'm going to shorten this to 1/4 of a second, which is, there we go. There we go. So now we can see our full animation. Next thing we want to do is we want to select these keyframes and we want to apply a nice curve to it. So if we look, we're not going to be using this, in fact I'm going to close flow, which is a really nice extension. I totally recommend you get hold of it if you're going to use After Effects a lot. But as it doesn't come with After Effects, I'm just going to open up the graph editor here, and I'm going to select the first keyframe and the last keyframe, and then I'm just going to apply an easy ease, and you'll see that we've now got a smooth curve going in and out. Now if we really quickly jump back into Figma, from our episode 2 we had a look at some of the curves here. So here we've got an ease in, which we can see is this curve here. So it's a nice curve here. And then if we go to an ease in and out, we can see it's this nice curve, which is exactly what we've got here in After Effects. So now let's have a look at that. If we play it, so it's playing quite quick. We might actually need to slow that down. In fact, I think we are going to need to slow that down. So let's make that half a second again and exit the graph editor, and need to zoom out. So you can zoom in and out on the timeline here as well. Just need to make these full length again, and let's put this to 30 seconds again. Yeah, I think that's about right. I think half a second works quite nicely. So if we quickly go back, grab our keyframes again, you don't need to do this, but I'll just demonstrate real quick. And we make it linear, so it's a straight line, and then we play it. We can see it just moves at a fixed rate across. I think this is called a playhead actually. And then if we apply that easy ease, you can see it's got a nice, it kind of ramps up, goes pretty linear across the middle, and then it ramps down nicely to finish. Cool. So we have now got our nice transition there. Okay, so let's exit that. What do we need to do next? Well, next we need to change the color of the background so that when it's in on, it is a different color. So let's have a look at that. If we go into expand our toggle, go into our contents, toggle background this time, and look for the fill, and the fill contains our color. And we have this stopwatch here, which means we can automate the color change and keyframes. So I'm going to apply it at 0 seconds so that we start with this gray, and then at the end, just going to pop back into Figma and find out what color we chose, and just pull that in. Whoops. And we got a 7B61FF, and I am going to make sure you've moved. I'm going to call this a playhead. I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's called a playhead. I'm going to then drop it there, and we can see it automatically applies a keyframe because we've got our stopwatch on. Okay, and exit that. When my computer decides to wake up, there we go. And I'm going to move that keyframe there. So now we've got a color change as it turns on. Let's move that one back. It's because I had both selected. Okay, so we've got a linear change as it goes across. But this isn't what we actually had in Figma. So when we designed this, you can see it's grey here, it's grey here, it's grey here, and then all of a sudden towards the end it turns purple. So to do that, all we need to do is add another keyframe just before the end so that we've still got that grey, and we can just copy and paste that. I'm pressing Command C and Command V because I'm on Mac, but it'd be Control C and Control V, and then we have the color change right at the end. So we got grey the whole way across, and then we got our color change. So as this is linear, we don't need to apply any curve to this portion of the animation. But between these two keyframes, as we've got a blend of colors, it might be nice to add some kind of ease. Let's just go for an easy ease for now. There we go, and you can see it's got this nice curve now. Let's see what that looks like. If I haven't explained already, this green line across the top is if it's actually rendered. If it's grey, and it usually will be grey once you make a change, so if I just move this over here, you can see this portion's gone grey. That means this section hasn't been rendered, and when you first play it, it might play quite slowly. So just to bear that in mind, that it's only playing at real speed if this is grey. Okay, so we've now got our nice colour change for our on transition. And I'm actually going to rename this composition on toggle, or toggle on. That way we know that this is our on animation. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is we actually want to manipulate the handle so that we've got a nice smooth animation. Okay, so now we're going to be editing our toggle handle, and we're going to be manipulating the actual shape. So to do that, we need to first expand our toggle handle, go down to our ellipse path, right click and convert to Bezier path. This will then, you might not have been able to see that, but this now has given us some handles that we can actually manipulate. So inside our path, we need to actually turn on the stopwatch and make sure the, I've forgotten what it's called again. Make sure the stopwatch is, this is set to 0 and we turn on here. Okay, so at this point we want it to be nice and round, and we also want it to be nice and round at the end. So I'm going to add another keyframe and just drag it to the end. And then somewhere along the middle, we want to actually squash and stretch it so that it kind of feels like it's got some movement. So we move it right to the middle, so right here at 15. We can then kind of manipulate the shape a bit. And I'm going to grab this end piece here. I'm going to pull it way out like this, almost to the end. And I'm going to pull this handle down a little bit, just a little bit, and let's have a look what that looks like. Okay, so we see it's probably pushing back a bit too much, and it kind of feels like it's pushing off the side. So let's go back and edit that a bit. So let's pull this in a little bit, because obviously we went a bit too far. So that's nicer. So we now got a bit of a stretch as it's moving, as it's got its most velocity. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to squash it a little bit so that, so the theory I'm going with here is as it's kind of stretched out, it needs to go in a bit, otherwise we're adding material rather than manipulating it. So the idea being that if you had a ball of blue tack, for example, and you pulled it, you would see it get thinner as well as longer, not just longer. So let's pull this down a little bit and pull this one up just a tiny bit, and let's have a look at that. Yeah, that looks really nice, and you can just see After Effects doing a really good job of it smoothly adjusting through the keyframes, and you can really see the power of this tool over animating in Figma, for example. So I think I'm quite happy with that. I like that. But what happens when we get to this end is the handle's kind of hitting up against the edge. So really it should kind of squash and deform a little bit as it hits the side, like a ball would if you threw it against the wall. So let's have a look at doing that. So at this point, I'm just going to copy the end state keyframe even and just paste it maybe a little bit further back here. Yeah. And I am going to just squash it as if it had hit the wall a bit. I'm also going to actually... No, I'm not. No, we're just going to manipulate the path for now. So as it's being squashed, we also expect it to rise up a little bit. And because it hasn't actually hit the side yet, I'm going to pull our position keyframe back a bit as well, so that it's actually hitting earlier, and then we're going to have it settle back in. So let's have a look at that. There we go. So that's quite nice. It's not actually reaching quite to the end, so I'm just going to extend this just a little bit. So we've got a little bit more to play with. There we go. Just pull these out so they don't go invisible. Right, let's have a look at that. Yeah, so we can see it's got a nice squash at the end. Okay, so as we've got a lot of movement going on here, we probably want to add some nice curves to that. So I'm going to go in and select those keyframes, and I'm going to give them an easy ease. Just make sure I've got all of them. There we go. And let's have a look what that looks like. There we go, so it's nice and smooth. So I think that'll do for our on toggle. Next we need to make our off toggle. So to create our toggle off animation, we are first going to, there's loads of different ways you could do this, but we're going to do it a way where you can learn how to do nested compositions. So first I'm going to press Command D and duplicate our toggle on. And I'm going to call this, it'll let me, come on, enter, there we go. Toggle off, and I'm just going to put working, just so I know this isn't the final toggle off. So this is just a direct copy of our toggle on, it's exactly the same. So if I play it, you'll see it's exactly the same here. And then what I'm going to come in and do is I'm just going to change our colors around. So we've got the purple here, just copy that. Come on. There we go, and I'm going to replace the grey with that purple. And you'll see why shortly, why we're doing this. And then we're going to need to grab that grey and put it on the end. So I'm just going to hop over to toggle on real quick so I can just grab that color code real quickly. There it is. So for you, it's C4, C4, C4. So you don't have to do that. Come on. Sorry, my computer's going incredibly slow. And if we head over to the last keyframe here and change the color to grey, now you can see it's in reverse. So now it goes to grey instead. Okay. So the next part is we're going to right click this and new comp from selection, and we're going to call this one just toggle off, if you'll let me. There we go. And the special thing about toggle off is you'll see it actually has toggle off working inside of it. And all we're going to do here is we're going to rotate this 180 degrees. So I'm going to press R, or you can go into your transform and find rotation and 180 degrees. So there we go, we can see it is now flipped. and we've got all our keyframes already done, so we don't have to do them again. So that's just a real shortcut way of doing it, and making sure that it's exactly the same animation that we have for our toggle on, but in reverse. There's other ways you could do this. You could right click, go to time and time reverse layer. However, because we're manipulating the shape here, if we did a reverse, it would reverse the keyframes and it would be the wrong way around, which would look confusing. So this is the best option for this example. So we've got our toggle off, toggle on, and our toggle off working. What I'm going to do is, just to make this a little easier, is final comps. So move the toggle on and off, not the working, into final comps, so we know that that's a working file and these are the ones we actually want to export. So in the next video, we're going to be learning how to export these for Lottie, and then we're going to be playing around with Lottie, showing how these work directly on a website, in code or on WordPress or something like that. So that's the end of this video. It's just a short introduction onto how to animate UI motion design components in After Effects. If you would like to see some additional animation examples, such as that hover example I showed earlier in the video, or if you want to just play around with colors, things like that, drop a message in the comments below. We can certainly do additional videos on animation in After Effects, but as part of this series, we're just trying to keep it quite simple. So in the next video, like I said, we'll be exporting these as Lottie files so that we can use them in our projects, or hand them over to the developers to use as actual UI components in our apps and websites. So thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me grow the audience, and this is a free course, so the more people it reaches, the better. The better it is, really, because I'm trying to give back to the greater design community. So thanks again for watching. This is Will from Will Brett Design, and I'll see you in the next video.